So we're doing 2 Carnegie sessions. Wanted to let you know that this is being filmed so that we can get it online, so that parents who weren't able to get here today or at 5:30, that they have access to this information. Carnegie, we're going to take you through experiencing Carnegie. We're going to let you work through some of the things that your students are working through. We're going to tell you about the curriculum. We're going to give you some reasons why Greenville County and our state is moving to this curriculum. And then at the end, we will have a question and answer session. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Barwick. Ms. Barwick teaches 7th grade math, Algebra 1 and Math 7-8, and is an expert in math, an expert in teaching, and definitely one of our best math teachers that we have here at Lee. Welcome. Thank you for coming. And she is going to lead us in the wall activity.
Teaching math looks different than how maybe we learned it. How I learned it was Anderson, and I'm sure all of you in the room, we're used to the teacher standing up here and kind of giving some notes, right, about how to solve a problem, copy down these steps, and now you go do some practice problems, right? And let me check them to see if you're doing it right. And so math doesn't really look like that anymore. A lot of times with that type of math, we've got people who said, I hate math, it doesn't make any sense, right? And so Carnegie has approached this as, well, let's focus on helping people make sense of the math, helping us develop mathematical thinkers. And so this is an activity that we would do with our 8th graders. And we would fall into a lesson or a unit where we're looking at linear relationships. And I know that may sound a little scary, but we're just going to take it one step at a time. I'm going to give each of you a packet because you would all the students have their own materials. But at the same time, I'm going to ask that you work together. That means when I ask you to talk, I should hear talking in the room, right? So this is called U.S. shirts. And when the students work on this, they would have had some understanding of X and Y's, graphing them in the coordinate plane. And we would be getting into what does this look like as far as writing equations. So we would talk about our learning targets. And while these are the learning targets for the whole lesson, today we're really going to look at making sense of different representations to model a problem situation, okay? All right, so together what I would like us to do is actually the 3 of you and the 2 of you, we're going to take about 1 minute. If you would flip to this page, this next page that says Getting Started, Cost Analysis. And I'd like you to designate one person at your table to read that paragraph out loud to the table. And then we're going to take about 1 minute for you to think through problem 1 and 2 and talk through that together, okay? About 1 minute. If somebody would read out loud first.
This past summer you were hired to work at a custom t-shirt shop.
This past summer you were hired to work
One
at
of
a
your
custom t-shirt
responsibilities
shop,
is to
U.S. shirts,
calculate the total cost of customer
calculate
orders.
total cost.
The shop charges $8 per shirt plus a one-time charge of $15 for 7 t-shirt design. Describe the problem situation.
So, can we get an explanation? What did you guys write for that first problem there? Describe the problem situation and your responsibility in your own words.
You want the formula or just?
Well, I just want you to tell me about the situation and what your responsibility is.
I would just figure out how much the shirts are going to cost.
Okay, to figure out how much the shirts are going to cost. So that's what we're trying to do, right? To figure out the cost of the shirts. All right, we're going to move on to the next page. A lot of people jumping ahead. So on page 83, this is the page that says Activity 1-1, Modeling a Linear Relationship. I want you to work with your table on number 1. It says, let's analyze various customer orders with U.S. shirts. So if you'll work through number 1, and be sure with D that you don't have to, and you guys just do you guys agree and understand the situation? About what we're doing?
So I want to see what you're doing. So you're doing this.
Yeah, so just the information you have this here,
because I misunderstood that.
sure, substitute it to know that in what cost then sure.
Yeah, so yes, exactly. Your responsibility in this scenario is to calculate the cost of insurance, right? So if you just go on over at number 1, and you guys will use that information over to calculate the cost of insurance. Okay? All right. So I was walking around and I noticed this table over here. They were writing some. Erin, is there pen work? Do we know? We'll just talk. Okay. We'll just talk then. I noticed you guys were writing down y equals, I saw you writing down 3 times 8 plus 15. 3 times 8 plus 15. Can you tell us in this scenario what that 3 was representing, what the 8 was representing, and the 15?
3 was the number of shirts.
3 was the number of shirts, and why did you multiply that by 8?
Because they cost $8 a piece.
Okay, and then you came back and added 15 because it's a one-time fee of $15, okay? But we didn't add the 15 3 times for the 3 shirts, right? One time, it's one-time fee, okay? On this one, what was similar? How did you guys calculate the cost of 10 shirts?
I did 15 plus 8 times 10.
15 plus 8 times 10. So again, we see that 8 showing up, and we're multiplying times the number of shirts, and we see the 15, that's our one-time fee, and we're adding that. Okay. And then similar for the 100, right? Same process. Can you see the pattern that we're using to come up with that cost? Okay. So what this is leading into for our students, I'm going to step out of kind of our example, is how to write an equation. So we're repeating this process of calculating the cost of the total shirts so that we can see what's that pattern we're using. Intuitively, we know we got to take that 15, we got to add it to $8 times how many shirts we have, right? But going from that problem to then writing it in a y equals 8 times x plus 15, that's a big jump. But now that you've gone through this and you've seen that pattern, if I ask you, how do we represent the cost of the shirts for an unknown number of shirts, right? We know what that pattern is. We know how we're going to use it.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is this the format that the children are using?
Yes.
Are they working in groups?
Yes.
And is this on paper?
Yes.
Well, and they're
Is it, well, we have consumable books, which is what Carnegie provides, and what they are is they're huge textbooks that most of the math teachers don't sit home. We'll tear out one topic at a time, they put it in their Bible. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Because I get confused with what Mathia is and what IXL is.
Yes.
We're gonna go over all that.
Okay.
So these are just photocopies I made for you guys out of the consumable textbook. These are all of the pages from the textbook are also available online in PDF form. So if you ever need to print them at home, like with your students login, they can access them. Yeah.
For when they forget to bring it.
For when they forget to bring it home, exactly. And a lot of teachers will actually post the PDF in classroom as well. So lots of ways to access the material. So again, this first part, number 1, was helping students start to build that pattern and learn how to write that relationship between 2 changing quantities. What were the 2 changing quantities? I know we talked about it over there. What were the 2 things in this scenario that were changing?
The number of shirts.
The number of shirts and the
Cost.
total cost. So those are our 2 variables, right? And then if we look at question 2, we're working backwards, right? We're thinking about if we have this much money, how do we then work backwards to see how many shirts I can buy? And so the process you guys were using, I heard as I was walking around, I saw a lot of people taking that amount of money and subtracting $15. Why did we subtract that $15 before we were trying to figure out how many shirts we could buy? Why would we subtract that?
cost.
Because that's a fixed cost, right? That $15, we've got to pay it no matter how many shirts we buy. So we're going to subtract that out, and then what we're left with, that's what we can use to figure out how many times we can pay $8 out there, right? How many shirts can we buy? So this particular piece of the problem is helping students build that understanding of how we can solve for an unknown equation. So the first part is looking at how we write that relationship, and the second part is how do we solve. So this is just a tiny little taste of what we would do. The lesson goes on to building a graph, writing an equation, and so on. But we just wanted to let you guys kind of get a sense of how it's taking your understanding that you already have and building on that to take you to new knowledge, okay, or new conceptual understanding. Questions about this particular activity? What was that like working with some other people to talk through a problem? Did you see that? Did the people at the tables think similarly, or did anybody think about it differently? Did everybody do it exactly the same way?
No, we did the
second
The
part.
second part.
The
we did
second
it.
part? Okay. How did you do it differently?
I did 15 minus 15 and then divided by 8,
Uh-huh.
where she did.
I kept the equation that I had from the beginning.
Okay.
And so then I isolated the x.
Okay. Okay, so you were using more the symbolic part, okay?
The old-fashioned way.
Okay, good, thank you. Ms. Anderson, you want to take over from here? All right.
Okay, so the purpose of doing that activity with you guys was to simulate what your students are doing in class. One of the biggest complaints, I'll call it a complaint, that I have heard is from a parent. My child says my teacher's not teaching, okay? Of course they think the teacher is not teaching, because in the traditional sense, like you said, and like Ms. Barwick mentioned a little while ago, in the traditional sense of math, think about your math teachers as you were in high school. They stood at the front of the room, they worked problems for you, then they gave you examples of problems, not concepts, just problems. And then you took that home and did it by yourself. There was no way for a teacher to really know if you were getting it until you took a quiz or a test, because there was not that discourse. And we're going to talk a lot about the word discourse, because that is really what we, as an education forum, and I mean the district, the nation, the state, are trying to increase those skills for students, because that's what the workforce tells us. Our kids in general, society, as we're raising children, they don't know how to do problem solving, critical thinking, and working through problems with other people. Basically, our kids would really like to do it the old way, because it's easy for those who get math. For those who don't get math, that would be me. When I was a kid growing up, just watching somebody do problems on the board did nothing for me, because when I took it home and tried to do it by myself, I did it wrong. And so I taught myself the wrong way, and then had to go try to relearn the right way again just by watching somebody else do it. So this way you're sitting with people, which is one of the biggest things that the workforce wants us to do, is to create people who can work together and critically solve problems. So that's kind of the background of this. Will you put me through? Thank you. So, the Long Live Math Manifesto. So these are the beliefs that we have in conjunction with Carnegie and our school district, and now the state, since the state has adopted Carnegie for all middle school and high schools going into next school year. We believe that mathematics is critical to life. It is a language that empowers us to communicate, solve problems, and make sense of our world. How many of you ever thought when you were in high school, when am I ever going to use this algebra? Because it was just problem after problem after problem of just algebra problems. I thought the same thing. I was going to go be an English major. I wasn't going to be doing algebra. And if I did have to do algebra, guess how I did it? On a calculator, right? Real life stuff. We believe that math is learning about more than just a good grade. It's about deep conceptual understanding that supports ongoing growth and continued development. We believe that all students can learn math the right way, really learn and understand it more deeply. When we believe in them, expect them to participate, and encourage them in their own learning. So what this turns the math teacher into is what language arts teachers have been for a very long time, facilitators. They're looking at individuals as they interact with each other, as the group helps each other solve problems. And so they know that day before students leave their classroom where some of the problems are. We're not waiting until a test to find out what's wrong and what the students are not getting. Okay? All right. All right. So we believe that better math education is more about is about more than memorizing equations or performing on tests. Can any of you repeat back to me the Pythagorean theorem that you had to memorize when you were in geometry? I can't tell you what it was. Okay. So that's a memorizing thing. You memorize it for the test, you make an A on the test, you move on, you never use it again. So this is more like math fluency. It's like learning to write. It's like you learn to write and then you write again and then you write again, and it's working on that communication piece in math. We believe that better math learning is important and possible for all students. And again, it goes back to this, it helps them become creative problem solvers, critical thinkers, lifelong learners, and more capable adults. And again, we're looking at, this is a much bigger picture than Math at League Academy, okay? We're looking at the profile of the South Carolina graduate, which I will talk to you about in a minute, that SC TAC put out to inform us on what the workplace is looking for in our students that we're growing. And this is exactly what part of that profile of the South Carolina graduate is expecting. There's an academic piece, so yes, I can make good grades and I can determine what my path is after high school, but I also need to be able to, as they say, they talk about soft skills, become creative problem solvers, and learning, helping the students not to completely melt down or disintegrate when something is hard. One of the things that we as middle school teachers are trying to teach our children is to persevere and to build some grit to deal with some problems. Those of you in 7th grade math, you could be dealing with the first time you've seen your student bring home a B, a C, or a D, right? And that might have you all melting down as well. Let's not melt down about it. It's about building that perseverance, because guess what? Math is only going to get harder. And school is only going to get harder. So if we don't start to build some of that perseverance through our curriculum, our students are gonna drop out of college when they get there, because there's not that safety net.
And I will say too, by 7th grade, which is what I teach, we have students already who say, I'm not good at math. And Carnegie really aims to combat that, by engaging people in that conversation about things we can all talk about. They call it low entry. Right? Anybody can jump in and talk about it. You guys haven't been sitting in an algebra class, but you can jump in and talk about this, right? So it's low entry mathematics that can help us grow.
Thank you, Ms. Barwick. So Carnegie Learning is a transformational math education company, okay? And what the real basis behind Carnegie is to individualize learning for each student and to help create that discourse that I was talking about, the learning. The best ideas in a work environment, I know for me, come about when we're talking. When we're brainstorming together, when we're working together, and that's what this is doing for our classes.
Did you want to watch?
Yeah, I do want to watch the video. So we have a little video about the Carnegie Math Classroom.
Empower them to work together to solve real problems and reach those aha moments. The Matthew software is kind of like my coaching chair. It coaches and pushes my students the way I would if I had that kind of one-on-one time with each of them. Each student gets their own adaptive pathway, which gives me tremendous insight. If we cover a topic together in the textbook, Matthew tells me exactly what each student knows, what they don't know, and even where they're headed. So I can always see the big picture and never lose sight of each individual. Here's the bottom line. My students are going to succeed. How do I know it?
I'll give you a hint.
Because they leave my classroom as thinkers. Knowing how to take on challenges. Knowing how to communicate and share their ideas. Knowing how to persevere when things get tough. And knowing how to make sense of the world that's in front of them. I build the next generation of great thinkers. And this is how I do it.
So what did you notice about that classroom that was similar to what you saw Ms. Barwick do just a little bit ago? Group work. What else? Or anything that I've talked about? What did that teacher talk about? Other than just group work, because group work could be just one kid doing all the work and the other kids copying off the paper. He said he's not the giver of knowledge. What did he mean by that? Right, facilitator. Facilitating the learning, interacting with students as they're working. He mentioned the individual piece where when he pulls up his software, his assessment software, he's able to see exactly where the students are and what they need and how to change the instruction to understand better what each student needs. And I mean, kudos to the math teachers for being able to change that mindset from, standing in front of the room to really getting in with the students and learning the math. So Ms. Barwick mentioned earlier that we do have some consumable textbooks. Do you want to talk briefly about
Sure.
your textbooks?
So yeah, we have, and you may have seen them in the film, right? Extremely thick
binders,
books,
yeah.
which is why we don't necessarily send them home. I think maybe some of the 8th grade teachers do, but most of us tear them out. They really facilitate active learning. As you can see in these activities, they're not about just passively doing problems and following steps. They're asking us to think and to understand the text that's given to us and to make sense of it. So it is that active learning through the activities, encouraging that collaboration, that discussion among the groups, strengthening critical thinking. Some of the questions might have made you really think about it, right? It's not a straightforward where you just put a numerical answer for every question. Some of them are asking you to articulate the relationships between ideas. Building the conceptual understanding. Again, here we're looking at the variables, things that are changing and how they're related to each other. And as I mentioned, everything is available if you go through Backpack and go to Carnegie Learning. You can get PDF access of your child's textbook as well as some skills practice that's available there. Any questions about the textbook? All right. The other piece is the Mathia piece, and the teacher in the video mentioned we have this collaborative environment in the classroom where students are working together and talking together, and the teacher is a facilitator. But no matter how much that teacher moves around the room, it's impossible for him or for her to give immediate feedback to every child on every problem that they're solving in that second that they need the feedback. And so Mathia is able to do that. It's a software that is it's an intelligent software in that it adapts to what the students are doing. So if they continue to miss certain types of problems or elements of problems, it's going to continue to give them those types of problems and scaffold them to that learning. If they need a hint, it gives them a contextual hint. So on the exact problem that they're working on, it's going to say, it's going to prompt them. I think you can get 3 to 4 hints depending on the depth of the problem, and it's going to take them right up to the edge of answering that problem. Ultimately, we want the students to do it without hints or without maybe more than one hint, because that shows they're really thinking about it, but they do have those hints available. And as the video showed and as Ms. Anderson said, we can pull up reports that are going to show us exactly what they struggled with, exactly how much time they've spent on it, when they logged into it, how many problems they completed, how many workspaces they completed. And what we're really aiming for is that the students are working on things in Mathia that are current with what we're working on in class, because then that independent work they're doing is supporting the group work we're doing in the classroom.
So do you do this first and that, or is it in conjunction, same day, or?
Great question. That's a great question. So typically for the units that we're working on in Carnegie, Carnegie will actually say, for this unit, there should be 9 days of working on the textbook pages and 2 days of working with Mathia. And so we split that up depending on the time we have in the classroom. So I will say typically we have about a day a week or a day every week and a half with Mathia. And again, I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for every teacher, but ultimately we're trying to get to Mathia in the classroom. And then we also ask that students work on Mathia at home. They can also work on Mathia when they're here in morning holding for 20 minutes. They can work on Mathia. We have C3 time where they can work on Mathia. So it is again that independent piece. So there are times in the classroom when they're working on it. If they get stuck, I can answer the questions, but then we're also asking them to work on it at home.
And then I guess the third part would be the IXL.
And the third part is IXL, which is an entirely separate piece. And when we talk about the conceptual understanding, the Mathia and the textbook go together in really building that conceptual understanding. The IXL piece is something that we also use to build that procedural fluency. So it's more about that repetitive problem solving, same type of problem over and over again to build that fluency.
Oftentimes, if a teacher sees, there are assignments that we can assign out of IXL to the whole class. What I'm encouraging teachers to do is to look at individuals, and they might say, Elizabeth, I think you probably need to work on some math facts. And here's a lesson in IXL that I would like for you to work on. So it's another way to individualize math for our students.
Can I just make sure I understand? Sure. Carnegie is this method of teaching.
It's a method and a curriculum.
Okay. And the Mathia is the execution of it.
Well, Carnegie is a company who employs cognitive scientists that really do a lot of research and study the way people learn and have worked together with mathematicians and the cognitive scientists to build the curriculum. Okay? The Mathia is the software piece that goes along with that. Okay. So they're in the same sequencing, same framework as far as how we're approaching
They
that.
go together.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Very good. And that this Mathia is all on their Chromebook, and it is expected to be done in the classroom. It can be given for homework to do. Okay. Is there a standard across the school that Mathia there are grades to Mathia, or is it a completion?
We have been provided with a rubric from the school district, and it was given to us maybe 5 weeks ago, I think. So we didn't have it at the start of the year, and different people were using different things. Those people who are counting Mathia as a grade are using that, and it basically has 3 elements to it. And it's available in Classroom. I would encourage you to ask your child.
Where they can find the Matthew rubric.
We can
They
probably
have it.
also post that on the website.
I can
just so
certainly
that
post
every
it on our
parent can
website.
access it. But basically, there are 3 elements to it. One is, are they doing the number of workspaces over a 3-week period that we've asked them to do? I ask my students to do 3 workspaces every week. Some workspaces take them 10 minutes, some workspaces take them 50 minutes. It just depends on what the workspace is about and how focused they are on it. It needs to be focused time. So the one element is the number of workspaces they've been asked to do. Did they do it? That's half the grade. The other half of the grade is made up by 2 parts, and 25 points of that is the level of hints that they're asking for. So if they ask for 1 hint or 2 hints, they're not really losing any points. If they're always asking for 3 hints, like really not engaging their thinking on the problem, then that counts off on the grade. So that's a fourth of the grade is the hints. And then the last piece of the grade is on the pacing. So are they really on track with where they ought to be for the year? Are they working at a steady pace? So that's how the grade is broken down on that rubric. And we can generate reports straight out of Mathia, the software, that will give us all those pieces. It says, are they on track? What's their hint score? And then how many workspaces have they completed within this 3-week date range?
And you can ask your math teachers for that.
I was gonna ask about that feedback, like, if you notice a number of students struggling in an area, do they get feedback on that, or how would they know?
Yes, that's what the whole thing is to inform the teacher about
But
the
does the
class.
student get any feedback? Do they know, hey, we're all struggling in this area?
Yes, that's the teacher's responsibility,
Well,
yes.
and I will say, within Mathia, there are, and I think we have a screen later, and I'm not sure if it has this level of detail, but with any workspace that they're working on, up in the upper right-hand corner, there are a series of circles. And the circles, I believe, start out blue.
You're like
and-
circles of death.
Does it?
This one is-
Okay, the circles of death, no, circles of success. Okay?
Circles of success, let's reframe.
So these circles, if you click on those circles, a pop-up window will show, and it will tell you, each circle represents some skill or some concept. And it will show them, that they may have partially green on that circle. And it's showing them where they're doing well. So that is feedback for the student on where they are, what they're struggling with, and what kind of problems it's going to keep giving them so that they can get green on all their circles. Yes.
Is this the program that the child will do some work on it and might have an 86, and then it bounces down to a 48?
That's IXL.
I don't know what
That's
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Some of the math teachers may not be using it. That's a supplemental program that is a choice of the math teacher to use.
I use it.
This Carnegie and Mathia is not a choice, okay? IXL is a supplemental resource.
And I will say, I've used it more with algebra and with my Math 7 class than I have with my Math 7A class, but I have used it some with them. But the most consistent software is the Mathia. Any other questions? Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So the IXL, to bring it back to our generation, the IXL would be like a different worksheet. Like the teacher goes to a different resource and pulls a different sheet, okay? That's what IXL is to Carnegie. Does that make
So is that
sense?
when they come in early for help?
They can come in for help, the teacher
And
may
then
put them on
that's-
IXL and talk with them through that,
Okay.
yes.
Because I
Yep.
didn't know what
Yep.
it was.
And then, some of us have help sessions where we're working with the students without the computer too.
Yes, yes.
With IXL, I will say, like I said, it's procedural fluency, but when they miss a problem, it will explain to them how to do it correctly. So they have to read and think through it. Yeah.
What did you call it? You called it a unit or?
A workspace and
Workspace.
Mathia.
So you said maybe 3 Mathia to a workspace, possibly over 3 weeks, maybe?
3 Mathia workspaces over 1 week. And again, that's what I do in my class.
So that would be the only way that you would know how the student is doing, not necessarily us sitting together, and if I'm always not seeing what they're seeing and I'm not getting it, you won't know that until I do this.
No. I'm moving around the wrote, just like I was over here looking at your paper to see what you wrote down and what you wrote down. And I was coming over here and talking to them about
Listening
their
to the
thinking.
conversation.
So
I'm like, for example, I'm sorry, if I'm like copying her, if I'm looking at her for her help, and I got it down on here because she helped me.
Right.
You really, you happen to pass by, it looks like I've got it going on, but until I do that on my own, I guess that's a
Well,
real picture.
it is possible that in class, you're gonna have to write work on your paper because you copied off somebody else's paper. And I may not know that until you
Okay,
do
so
something
that would
online.
be-
Same with giving traditional
Yeah.
homework.
Right.
So
You know, same with giving
you do it
right,
yourself.
right. But the teacher, this generation of teachers is trained as a facilitator. And so we have an eye, we know who's not doing it themselves. And we also know at what level our students are in our classrooms. So if you are performing in general, like on state tests and other things that we have informed data on at a certain level, but yet you're getting all of her right answers, we know. And so it's a more, you know, that is,
Yeah, just, I wasn't talking about cheating necessarily,
Uh-huh.
just like if I'm feeling and I'm not getting it, but because we're working as a group together, I'm getting the right answers down because as a group, we do it together.
and the learning takes place in that conversation. Yeah.
And so I am always encouraging people to participate in the group discussion. So if you're not understanding it, but she's helping you, I want you to keep talking because that group is building that discourse. Your ability to talk about it, to even say what you don't understand, is helping you because you're
It's
clarifying
helping you
where
learn.
you need that support.
And I would think that if your child needs more one-on-one, encourage him or her to go to the tutoring.
Yeah, and to speak up. So we do ask that, you know, a lot of teachers have a poster that says, ask 3 then me, right? Ask 3 people in your group for help, and if you guys can't work it out, then ask the teacher.
And the teacher will then work with that small group to facilitate how the discussion should go.
Yeah. Yes.
So the information that you get from Mathia that might tell you which students are lacking in which areas, do they get that feedback before the test?
Well, they have that constant feedback through those circles.
Circles, okay.
They have that constant feedback of where they are. They know when they're missing those problems.
So that's their goal, is to get the green circles.
Their goal is to get the green circles, and when they successfully complete a workspace, then they advance to the next one. Yeah. So they do have that feedback. And then we're, like I said, that's the independent piece, and then we're working in the classroom and groups and doing that group discussion. Do you have a question?
Yeah, how were back in our day, a test was 10 questions and how was the test set up in this? Because, you know, going from Bella, her test last week, it was only 12 questions, half the class didn't even finish it. Is it a group test? Is it, how is it?
That's a great question. No, the group tests are, the tests are not groups, they are individual. I will say in the algebra class, it's been mostly on paper. This last one was online. And so I've kind of gone back and forth with that. The things that I really feel like they need their hands on to do, I've tried to do on paper. But no, those are individual tests, and they are based on the Carnegie curriculum pre-created test that we look at prior to starting the unit, and we look at the things they need to know for that unit to be successful, the learning targets, and then the test questions. They'll have like 20 test questions, and we're pulling some questions out of there. These are the ones that are clear, these are the ones that we think they ought to be able to do, these are the ones we worked on, this type of problem in class, and that's how we're doing the test. So I have had students say, wow, it's only 10 questions, I want 30 questions because I don't want each question to count as much. And then at the same time, like you said, the 12 questions, they're having trouble finishing. So we're trying to balance that out and gauge what are the students what are they able to finish, and what do they need to be able to finish to show that they've mastered the material.
So with us learning this new method, are the kids struggling, are they trying to learn it as well? So when the kids are struggling with these test scores, because they're not picking, because this is all new, and I think it's great, but it is new.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, so if I can't figure it out on my phone, I can't figure it out. Are they suffering because we're still trying to learn as instructors of, okay, maybe 12 is too many, maybe 30 is way out of the question, but
Well,
like what is the, you can't just retest every test.
Exactly. You can't retest every test. And I will say, I can speak for myself that as a teacher, when a test is done, I am looking at, were there too many questions? If I have a lot of people who didn't finish, I'm going to assess that situation. And what I really love about, and here's another software for you, EduLastic is where the tests are online, is that when you look at that, the test results, you can see for each student how many seconds they spend on each problem. So, for example, this test that they had the other day, that a lot of them didn't finish, there were several questions where I could pull it up and say, well, this child had 9 seconds on this question, or 20 seconds on that question. Obviously, they didn't even get to try on that one. And so I was able to make the decision, well, I'm not going to count that against them. All right. So yeah, every teacher is, as a professional, is looking at their teaching practice and is looking at their student scores and comparing what the students are doing, what the teachers are doing, what should be, are the students doing the work outside of class? All of those factors are coming together in making those decisions. But yes, so we are looking at how much time they're spending. How does that compare? So if a child that I know is coming to my help sessions every day, is doing the Mathia and is on track, is doing the IXL and doing well, and then comes to class and is not able to finish the test, that's a good piece of information for me, okay? Also, if I see another child who's doing the same thing and then makes an A on the test, there are lots of different factors that go into making those decisions. So yes, we are all learning it, teachers are learning it, and students are learning it, but we're also constantly evaluating where we are and how we're implementing.
So that students aren't suffering just because it's a new thing.
Exactly. Yes. I will say, a lot of times when I'm looking at questions that are missed, and I talk about it with my algebra students in particular, they will recognize, I didn't read it carefully. They miss it because they didn't read it.
And it is a lot of reading. And that is something a little different too, because the questions are not just solve the problem.
Yeah.
It's a lot more reading and analyzing, which is a little different.
I have noticed that my son is becoming more resilient
Good.
with his
And that's the goal.
failures.
Yes.
We're not having massive meltdowns because of a 55. And, life is kind of full of disappointment and failures, so.
And if we're not failing, we're not learning.
Right.
Let's be real about that. I think that sometimes, I'll be honest with you, middle school parents, especially I've been in middle school for 20 years, middle school parents don't want their students to feel discomfort. And that's doing them a disservice. Number one is middle school. We're preparing for the real thing. It's just middle school. But we do need to be able to go, okay, just like in real life, okay, I didn't get that job. Why didn't I get that job? And what do I need to change about my interview skills? So same thing, okay, I didn't get that concept in math. What do I need to do to make sure I get that concept? That's part of this discourse and part of middle school in general.
Yes. Okay, of course. Of course. No.
You mentioned tutoring sessions. Does every teacher have that? 'Cause I
Most teachers have something in place, whether it be before, after school. We've started the new C3 time, which teams are gonna work on rotating in and out of that. So I would suggest you just contact your math teacher.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So I want to be able to get everybody out in a timely manner. So we have about 10 more minutes left, and I did want to give you some information about Carnegie and why we're using it. Number one, we're using it because our district has decided we're using it, but it is a way for us to really look at developing and growing our math scores, our math achievement. That's something we're really focused on and dedicated to this year. And so that is one of the reasons why we jumped in. Now, not every Greenville County Middle School is using Carnegie. However, the state has adopted it for all middle and high schools for next year. So all of us just kind of go, not going away. We might as well, be happy about it. But we are happy about it because of the way that it sets us up, especially at our communication arts magnet school, to really be a communicative math class. We've been not worried about that, but we've been talking about that for years, how to get the communication piece into the math without it just being, teacher-led all the time. So, or teacher-focused, I guess I should say. So, does Carnegie help students? Here is the data. So we had a few schools in Greenville County who used Carnegie last year, and they saw a 10.76 growth from 17-18 to 18-19 in math. That's a big deal. 10 percentage points is a big deal. And the district saw that 4.6 growth. So we are seeing growth in math. I think, like Ms. Tyndall said, we're seeing growth in our students, not only just in academics, but in that perseverance piece that I was talking about that they've got to have in order to get through what's coming to them. And even though, maybe math has always been easy for your student, 7th grade is really where the rubber meets the road, and it's where math becomes hard. And so building those skills to really work through it and to not quit because it's hard. I don't feel like doing this. And we also know with this generation of student that they need to be engaged in something all the time. And that's that screen, that's the video game, that's the movie, that's Netflix, that's social media that they are all so addicted to. That we've got to keep them moving. And sitting in rows watching a teacher do math problems on the board, y'all, that's boring. This way they get to work with their peers. They get to problem solve together. So just really what we want to do with Mathia and with Carnegie is to engage the students more. That is really the goal, and is to grow our students. And I think we're starting to see that. It is always hard to do something new, especially those as adults when we look at something, and a lot of times we think because we went through school, we know how it should be, but things have really, really started to change in the last 10 years and how we need to engage students so they are successful. And that's just the beast that society is. And so no longer can we just give them information while they sit in their chairs and write it down, because they just won't do that. They just won't. Those are our reasons. And this is what Carnegie is. It is a curriculum, and it is a newer way to explore math.
Ms. Anderson, I had a question earlier about how can I help my child at home? And I think we have a slide in there.
We do.
About
I'm
things.
looking. I'm trying to.
I don't mean to skip over
Nope.
those if you want.
It's okay. Did you want to talk about this slide?
Yeah, I think this is a great little pyramid showing the retention. So we're used to, again, this lecture where the teacher talks about it and gives the example, and then the children do. But when we have these more participatory teaching, the group discussion, doing the practice, and then teaching others, working in that group, that's when they really start to retain the material. I think we talked about that.
Gain balance. Yeah.
We talked about those.
There's that profile of the
Okay.
South Carolina
Yeah.
graduate.
So how can you help at home? So I just want, the first thing I want everybody to know is that you don't have to know all the answers to the math to help your child. Really, it's about asking them, how did you do this at school? Where in the lesson did you work with this? How does it look like something you did in class? What strategy did you learn in school? Does your answer make sense? This is a big one. Does it make sense? Because I can't tell you how many times I've graded tests with these most unreasonable answers written down that just make no sense at all. When if we can get our children to think about, well, does this make sense? Does it make sense that I said 50 shirts is going to cost $2? Well, no, it really doesn't make sense, right? So we can start to weigh those, and we want them to think about, do the numbers make sense within this context? But that's the best way to help them. Ask them about what they're doing. Have them use those notes as a resource, because flipping back to find the information, a lot of times that's the biggest struggle in class, is getting them to turn the page back to find where the notes are about that concept, or to look at that example problem that we did go over in class. Is there anything else on it? There we go.
There was one slide that
Yes.
you took a photo of, and she took a photo of.
Okay.
Oh, what was it?
That was really helpful.
How to get online and how to.
Oh, yeah, okay. The getting on Mathia at home, access at home. Yeah, so we had, especially at the beginning of the year, we had several people that were struggling there. No, that one, okay. So there are two things I think that I've seen consistently cause people trouble, and that is they had Mathia open at home, they close their Chromebook at school, and they get home, open their Chromebook, and the tab's already open, and they try to work. That's going to be an issue, right? So whenever you close your Chromebook and it goes to sleep, they need to come back and re-log into Backpack. So they need to start fresh each time, or else you're likely going to lose that information or lock up at some point in Mathia. So you always want to start from backpack, you click on the educational apps, and this is, the kids know where that
Yeah, they
is.
know.
They click on Carnegie Learning, log in with the Active Directory, and then choose Mathia. Sometimes at home, if you don't authenticate, that can also cause you to have difficulty getting onto Mathia. So those are the two things. Make sure you're opening a new tab and going through backpack, not using a bookmark, and make sure you're authenticating. Thanks for bringing us back to that one, because that is a big one. Other questions, comments, concerns?
How big are the groups?
How big are the groups? Typically 4. I have some that are 3. And again, I'm speaking for my class. Earlier in the year, I have been working in pairs.
Sometimes it's pairs, sometimes it's 4, but I think it's either gonna be 2 or 4.
Do they switch around? Or do they stick with the same group the entire time?
During the day or during the year?
When they're working as a group, is it usually the same? Because I guess I saw them all
Yeah.
sitting in their
Yeah.
tables.
So they have, in my class, they have an assigned group. And I've been very careful about who to put with whom, so that I know they can work well together. I do change seats, not usually within a class period, but maybe
Throughout the
every
year,
4 or
they're
5
different.
weeks or so, they're gonna get a new group. Because it's important they learn to work with different people, and we can learn different things from working with new people.
I mean, it seems odd that they say, and I read when you sent the link to the Carnegie site, like, I'm a little skeptical because it's a company selling a product, so
Yeah.
I'm not, they sell textbooks,
I
lots
get
of
that.
companies do that, but at the same time, if grades and that kind of system doesn't matter, the only way to prove that is gonna be the final assessment. Are they getting do they understand it?
And the research shows that this program and this textbook, and we buy textbooks all the time, does promote that growth, as I showed you earlier, so yes.
And we'll know this year if
Yes,
it works. with
yes.
their- with their
It didn't start out
training
this
steps.
way, right? Did the school year start with Carnegie? It did?
Yeah.
But this is the first year that we decided for.
This is the first year that League has had Carnegie, and we wanted to work out all the little kinks that we needed to work out before we invited parents to the session.
Well, I knew it was something different.
Yeah.
Because my daughter is doing better than she was before.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
I knew.
Thank you for that.
So,
I think this is, I think this is a great way to learn, especially these days. Is South Carolina, like, if it doesn't work, God forbid it doesn't work, is it a kind of a year-to-year trial thing, like,
Well,
hey, we tried it,
that
we're not gonna do it
that
next
is
year?
ongoing in education.
Okay.
Ongoing. There is never the same year, and my teachers can attest to this. There is never anything that is done without intention and without data. I mean, we are swimming in data all the time. And so when something is not working, we will step back and evaluate it. So, I mean, and that is at the school level, the district level, the state level, all over.
So what school data that was using it last year? Like, was it 2 schools? Was it 1 school?
There were 3 middle schools last year.
Okay.
And now there are 15.
and next year, everyone.
And next year, everyone in the whole state.
Well, and I understand, I read the 144-page PDF, like, did you? Like, 7 people on the panel, like, I went through it all, because I was on the leader and meet committee when we implemented it before. So, yeah, it's skeptical, because you're selling something, and it's like you're using data to sell it, and is it really gonna benefit? In my cases, I'm not worried about everybody, I'm worried about my child, and that's what I need to worry about.
Well, and if you look at it that way, you could apply that to every single thing that we do because we purchase things.
Yeah.
I mean, we have programs all over the place. We've got special ed programs, we've got reading programs, we've got math programs, we've got textbooks that the state buys. I mean, so looking at it that way, I mean, I guess you're going to be skeptical of anything, but because that is what we do is purchase materials.
I could see a neat activity with this. I think a lot of children say, why do I need to know this? And they're just too naive to understand. Life is more than them, you know? But I think the real life things are very helpful. Like one day you might, son, in high school, work at a store where you might have to do this. And so if there was a way for parents to provide a math equation that had to do with their career, it would be kind of neat then, you know.
Yeah, that would be
Because
cool.
like my husband's an architect. He uses math all the time. And we're nurses, and we have to use math all the time. So I can see how that would figure that,
No, it's not just sitting around doing problems. Thank you so much.
That's a great idea. This is how we apply this in real life. Oh, I might only have $25 for gas.
How many gallons can I
How
buy?
many can I buy?
Yeah.
I think that helps it become real. Like, this is the reason why we need to know this.
This also puts a level playing field for all the students.
Yeah.
You no longer really have good math teacher versus bad math teacher. I mean, they're learning the same things at the same rates, depending on some individualization that the teacher may need to do. And I don't want you to take away from that it's canned, because that's not the case, but, because it's quite individualized. But, you've got teachers on the same page, giving the same assessments, working with the same standards. So you kind of take away that, well, in this class they're doing this, and this class is easier, this class is harder. You've got the same content. You've got to go to class.
I don't know the time it is, but I hear noise.